What does dim do? In this video, I'm going to explain what the dim function does in Affinity Photo's procedural texture filter. So when I first saw the dim function, and in the documentation it's written dim XY, I immediately thought of my first programming language, BASIC, where you would use dim XY to dimension an array of X elements in one dimension and Y elements in the next dimension. So I thought it was that, and it turns out it has nothing to do with arrays. Dim has to do with dimming something, like if you dim the lights. So what it does is really quite simple. It's just X minus Y, but the minimum is clamped to 0. To demonstrate the dim tool, I'm going to start with a photograph that I took at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. And I'm going to add a live procedural texture to this. I'm going to add a single equation and assign it to all 3 channels. I'm going to start by creating a variable for the image. I'll just call it I, and I'm going to set it equal to a vec3 of R, comma, G, comma, B, capital R, capital G, capital B. So that'll take the red, green, and blue data from the image and create a vector with that. So if I look at that, that just returns the image again. Now I'm going to create a 0 to 1 range input for the dimming function. I'll give it the variable name D, and I'm going to label it dim. And so when this is at 1, it'll be maximally dimmed. At 0, there will be no dimming. Now I'm going to use the dim function. So I'll put in dim of I, comma, and I would use D, but since I is a vec3, turns out D also has to be a vec3. So I'll just write vec3 of D, and that will assign D to all 3 elements of this 3-element vector. So it'll have the same thing in all 3 places. Okay, and so now it's set to 0, and so if I bring this up, it gets dimmer and dimmer, like that. Now I'm going to add another equation and switch over to this one and copy this and paste it down here. And then I'll set that to all 3 channels. And I'm going to change this to I minus D. Okay, and so you saw that it didn't change. So if I go back between these two, it's sort of hard to do it, but they basically don't change between the 2 images. So they do basically the same thing. There is one difference though. If I put parentheses around this and make it negative, then you see sort of a negative image as you dim it. Whereas if I set this one negative, it just is black. So this one will be limited so it doesn't ever have any negative values on the output. I could do that a different way if I use the clampmin function, and for the minimum I set that equal to 0. Now I have to remember to do a vec3 of 0 for that, and that will assign 0 to all 3 elements of the vector. And then look at the negative of the clampmin function. It just goes black. So now these 2 are basically identical. Now I could, instead of just having a constant, I could have a pattern. So I'll create a little pattern. I'll just use A as a scale function, set it equal to 4. And then I could create a variable v equals vec2 of rx comma ry times a divided by w, and then take and create an variable, a texture that's equal to an oscillator of V, something like that. And instead of D, I'll use the letter T in here. And so then I can get an oscillator that I could position over this image. And if you want to do something complicated, you know, you could do that to dim the image that way. So this can be a texture, it can be a vector, but the elements have to match. So if the first element is a vector, all the elements have to be a vector, and they have to be the same size vector. All right, let me know if you have any comments or questions, and thanks for watching.